help women save lives and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. When she just came out, she told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. We had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I'm Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live as we plow through January and February and March of 2025. Be sure to get your 40 Days for Life gear. We will kick off the largest spring campaign ever on Ash Wednesday, which is March the 5th. So Lent is a little later than it's been. Get out of February, thankfully. And March the 5th, we will kick off. And so be sure to get your gear and get ready. Hopefully you have marched for life. And hopefully you have also listened to our Defund Planned Parenthood video webcast that we aired a couple of weeks back. If you have not watched that or listened to it, go to defundplannedparenthood.com and sign the petition to actually defund Planned Parenthood and listen to that. We give you 5 simple steps. It's about a 35-minute webcast. You can listen to the recording, watch the recording, and sign the petition and learn how you can defund Planned Parenthood where you live. Today, we will pick up on that topic and talk about the horrible things that will happen if we do, in fact, defund Planned Parenthood because they provide so many essential services. And if we take away their $750 million, which is roughly about a third of their income, they will go away and we will all be destitute. So we will dive in to see if that is true or false. And that is the topic of today's podcast. And if you are watching this, this is definitely one to watch because Steve and I are in public depression because our teams suck. Mine was out in October, and I was actually glad because as you get older, you lose hope, right? This is just part of becoming an adult. And so my boys were still like watching the Cowboys, and I like watched them at Thanksgiving, right? Because it's just like part of the 10 Commandments. You have to watch the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. But they were so bad, like by October, that it was over, and then Dak got injured, that I lost hope, and there was a lot of freedom in that. It was really, I had more time. I didn't worry about it. And then I wanted them to lose because that's what you're supposed to do in the NFL. There's no recruiting like in college where you still kind of need to look good. You need to lose so you get a better draft pick. And my sons thought I was like a traitor and a horrible person. You, however, went through what I went through last year when the Packers beat the Cowboys, actually, in that you kind of had hope. And then that was crushed by the evil, horrific, satanic Philadelphia Eagles.
It was rough. The whole season, the Packers looked good. They won 11 games, but it was like, they can. There's room for them to take it to the next level. And with the playoffs here, this is when it all comes together. They're going to go on an extended run. And I was going to be on this podcast wearing my shirt as the Packers were getting ready to go to the Super Bowl. And then instead, they just decided to completely forget how to play offense. And I'll tell you what, Sean, as longtime listeners of the podcast know, I, a couple years ago, landed a...
No, allow me to do the intro.
Okay, do the intro for this.
And Ramona Trevino is here, by the way. And you're a huge Cowboys fan, but for some reason you're happy and smiling.
I have a love-hate relationship with the Cowboys.
So
I love them when they win, and then I laugh and make fun of them when they lose.
So I love the Cowboys. They could lose every game, and it's fine. And I am one of the very, very, very few Jerry Jones defenders who is left because it's his team. You're not going to tell me how to run the Dallas Cowboys. And so he can do whatever he wants, right? You like Jerry. Ramona, you're a wonderful person. You're a wonderful lady, okay? Just root for the Cowboys. So Jerry buys the team, and they win the Super Bowls, and then he's actually been the problem, and I realize he's the problem. So I can explain why the Cowboys, are so bad and just disappoint year after year. The problem is, that's his fault. Your situation with the Packers is actually your fault.
Personally, my fault.
It is. And the listeners know you were given an opportunity to get, was it 4 season tickets?
Yes.
So like the day you're born, you're put on the list for the Packers?
That happens for many people. I didn't get on until I was like 10 or 11, but
that's right, because we blame
28 years.
Your parents.
Yeah.
This is one of the problems with your childhood is your parents didn't put you on there when they had you. So you finally got the opportunity to get the tickets, and we actually asked the listeners, should you get them? Mm-hmm. And I was a big yes. I was like, this is a family thing, and it'll be good recreation, and you can take your boys and all that stuff. Of course, selfish motivations, because eventually the Cowboys will get a Lambeau, and I want to go with you. Mm-hmm. So, but you took the ticket. Everybody wanted. I don't think we had any naysayers, actually.
There was one.
Why the look on your face? Was it like your mom? Like who was it?
It may or may not have been our leader from Green Bay itself.
Oh, okay. Well, he doesn't count. All right, he's crazy. Okay, so which is shameful. He was an NFL referee. Okay, so you take advantage of it. You get tickets, and I am excited to announce that in your first year as a season ticket holder, they lost every single game that you went to.
Well, second year. Last year was a little bit better, but yes, they the Packers had 9 home games this year. There's like partial season ticket packages, so I don't know if anybody has like all 9 games, but I've got a partial package. Yeah. It's this weird thing. They used to play a third of their games in Milwaukee at the baseball stadium for reasons that make not a whole lot of sense.
But that was like 50 years ago or something.
30.
Okay, was that recent?
Yeah, so they still honored those distinct different
like when they
packages.
had Favre, they were doing that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because there weren't enough fans in Green Bay? It was like
I don't remember the reason.
That's weird. Okay.
Yeah, and they agreed that it was weird. Like, hey, we have the iconic football stadium in all of professional football. Why don't we just do all of our games there instead of try to like reshape the baseball field? And so, in any case, they still honor those packages. And if I took the Milwaukee package, I could get my tickets earlier than anyone else. And so the Packers had 9 home games this year. The games that I had, they lost all of them. The games that I didn't have, they won all of them.
So you single-handedly.
You're making a compelling case for that. Yeah, I don't want to face the facts there. I'm going to reserve judgment, but it does seem like there's a common denominator. I'm going to weasel out and say correlation does not equal causation.
What happens if, like, in 3 years, let's say you've had the tickets 5 years, and you had that first year where it was good. What if they've literally lost every game that you attend? Are you that superstitious where you'd be like, I'm going to sell my tickets or give them away?
I'm not emotionally prepared to respond to that question.
I didn't think that was going to be what you said. I'm not emotional.
I don't even want to think about that.
We've also discovered he can't watch the game either. They lose when he's watching.
Yeah. Well, So
he just needs to stay away.
He just needs to.
Hey, look,
away.
This year I've made some personal strides in my detachment and my personal maturity, because normally after the Packers lose a playoff game, do you remember the REM song "Everybody Hurts"?
Yeah,
just listen to that on loop.
Yeah,
just all the rest of the night. And this year I was all right. There was one year my wife's like, "I don't think you even enjoy watching the playoffs," and I said, "You're right, I don't." And she said, "Why do you do it then?" I said, "Because like you endure it for the hope of the payoff of celebrating the victory at the end." And so the Packers like have a Hail Mary pass. It sends it into overtime. It's a miracle, and then they lose in overtime. And my son Peter and I are kind of looking at each other like, oh, now we got the long, cold Wisconsin winter ahead with nothing to look forward to. And Laura's trying to cheer us up. She said, "Steve, we've seen games where they get blown out. They were competitive. They made it close."
No, that's terrible.
I said, if they get blown out, that's like getting dumped on the first date.
Yeah.
Losing in overtime after they tied it on a miracle Hail Mary play, that's getting left at the altar.
Yeah.
And Laura she just looked at me and she said, "You're sick." And she turned around and she walked out of the room.
But us being sick when it comes to sports was never up for debate. Like that, I've admitted that from the very get-go. My 16-year-old son, Seamus, is so funny because one day he went on like a rant about how I was a spoiled child because in the 90s, like all the movies were awesome, the Cowboys were awesome, the Aggies were awesome, and I really couldn't refute him at all because I'm like, yeah, your childhood sports-wise is just ultimate disappointment, and yet he's way more loyal and faithful. Like he'll watch them. I'm like, we're done. We've won 4 games all year. He watched the last game of the year. It's just, I don't know. I guess I should be more respectful, but that he's so loyal. Hopefully he's that loyal to me as I get older. But like, it's just unbelievable because I'm out mentally in October. And it was like, I don't care. I hope that they lose so that the draft is better. And
Hope is a dangerous thing.
hope is a dangerous thing, as they say. Did you see Shawshank Redemption or you're just saying that?
I saw the trailer.
Freaking loser. I saw the you can't quote a movie trailer. You've never seen it. That's like a universal law. Okay. We are going to defund Planned Parenthood. As I mentioned, go to defundplannedparenthood.com and sign the petition if you haven't already done so. So today, this whole thing, because people in daily conversation are going to be asked, why they can't defund Planned Parenthood. I mean, abortion is they do abortions, and that's bad. I disagree with that. But who's going to help the classic poor minority women? They're poor. They're maybe brown or black, and they're women. They're horrible people, and Planned Parenthood helps them. So let's cover what this would actually mean, like if they disappeared, because I got ridiculed one time in a media interview because I said, they said something about Planned Parenthood provides all these services or something. And I said, Planned Parenthood doesn't do anything. And if they go away, we don't need them. Like there's plenty of, is that true?
Absolutely.
So we will go through this. You're going to be repeating some of this stuff because Steve and I don't have the desire or the maturity.
You've got desire problems.
I've got desire problems, which is on the list of things that they cure. And I am never going to inquire what they do to increase
But you're
desire.
making the assumptions, Sean, that I have the desire and the maturity to repeat these things.
No,
as
I
well.
am. No, you're a woman. This is your job, is to be more mature when it comes to these.
Okay,
some
I'll
of
do my
these-
best.
Some of these topics of things that these aren't even medical terms. Planned Parenthood is just a bunch of perverts. Okay, here we go. Here's a list of all of Planned Parenthood's services according to their own website. The first is the STD testing and treatment, and they list every STD known to man. The first is chlamydia.
Mistletoe.
Genital warts. There we go. Don't Google it. The funniest on here is gonorrhea because gonorrhea is classic in my childhood because I didn't know what it was. I know that sounded bad. I didn't know what it was but Ace Ventura: Pet Detective came out when I was in the 5th grade, which is a great moment in the history of my life. And Ray Finkel is the kicker and Dan Marino. And Ray Finkel's mom, because Dan Marino held the laces in and Ray Finkel missed the field goal. We all know the story. And so Ray Finkel's mom says Dan Marino should die of gonorrhea and rot in hell. Would you like a cookie, son? Like, it's a great scene. And she's got the cookies. And he's like, they're little footballs. And laces out. Okay, for those of you who like that movie. But I didn't know what the hell gonorrhea was. I just thought it was a funny line, and then you get older and you're like, that's really bad, mainly for Dan Marino. Okay, so they treat all these STDs. We're not going to go through them because, again, we're already testing our maturity as adults.
I thought this one was from eating undercooked pork, so I'm learning something on the podcast today.
And you're referring to trichomonas, right?
Yeah.
Pubic lice.
That's something.
That's just like you're paying for all your sins and more. Okay, so all of this, they list all these STDs. Then they list pregnancy testing and planning. And this is interesting because they charge for pregnancy tests, but you can go to a pregnancy resource center and get them for free.
You can even go to the Dollar General store and get it for like a $1 or something like that.
So as a former Planned Parenthood manager, let me ask you, because I've said a lot of times publicly, like they should do them for free, even though I shouldn't say that because I don't want them to start. But did you ever work there and be like, why don't we actually do this for free? We can kind of get them in.
Yeah, absolutely. I found it insane that we charged so much for them when we charged so little to purchase them, right? Like just to purchase them alone was, I don't remember what it cost us, but what we were making in profit, because we charged $25. And we had a lot of young girls who came in and asked, why don't you offer these for free? They didn't have $25. And
What did you say?
what can you say?
Right.
But I did refer them to the Pregnancy Resource Center.
You did.
I did.
For free pregnancy
But I
tests.
didn't know it was.
But this isn't because you're like internally starting to convert. This is just because you're like, this is
No,
actually
it was
helpful to
because
you.
in the Rolodex there was something. Someone, the previous manager, I assume, had left something in the Rolodex that said "free pregnancy tests" in all caps, and then gave the phone number. And I didn't know it was the Pregnancy Resource Center, and I didn't know it was an issue, a conflict of interest to send girls that way. And so I said, well, we charge $25, but I know somewhere here that you can get it for free. So I would give them the phone number.
So you didn't just say, as the manager, you can have it for free. Did you ever do that?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Like when somebody gives you a free drink or doesn't charge you for an appetizer or something. Okay.
Sometimes. Sometimes I took it off the tab, if
Okay.
they were getting other services done.
Okay.
Yeah. But if that's all they wanted was a pregnancy test, then I would just send them over to the
Because then it's endless.
To the
People will
PRC,
come in.
yeah.
Okay.
I have a question, Ramona. We're on the outline here. We're talking about the services that Planned Parenthood provides. And so far, we've covered the STD testing and the pregnancy testing. Are those next to each other on Planned Parenthood's website, or is it like coincidental that they're next to each other on the outline?
That's a good question. I don't remember. I think it's just coincidental that I put
Okay.
them that way.
I'm just curious because it seems to me like oftentimes in the discourse, you see sort of this, it's not explicit, but it's almost implied that like pregnancy is just one more sexually transmitted disease.
Right. I actually think abortion was first on their list.
Okay.
Abortion and then birth control.
Really? That's surprising.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that like I didn't know they did abortions, but I'm saying it. Usually they kind of tuck it away. They have historically actually since Roe fell, they've been wearing the abortion T-shirts and propping it up more. So maybe that has kind of overflowed in
And
the
it
website.
goes back to the Alexis McGill Johnson maybe not being the best foot forward for Planned Parenthood at all times.
Right.
No, she has been, and we have some of her clips in the defund Planned Parenthood webcast, but we don't pick on her. But we've said with all seriousness, she's an incompetent leader. She's not very effective. She's not as good as previous presidents. Certainly is nowhere near the talent of Cecile Richards, thankfully, which is a great time, makes it a great time to defund them. Okay. They also do ultrasounds. So
Some of them.
Some of them do ultrasounds. They charge for it. And then we've heard other former workers say they will charge you for the ultrasound, but then say we can take that amount and apply it to the abortion if you go through with the abortion, kind of the sales pitch.
And we never had an ultrasound machine in our facility.
Okay.
So everything was done at the abortion center. But yeah, that's true about the
So
ultrasound
on the whole, if we defund them, so far we're at they treat all these STDs. They do pregnancy tests, and they'll refer you if you're infertile. They do adoption referrals. They actually don't do adoptions, but the stat was always like one adoption referral for every 191 abortions. It was just like kind of non-existent.
And then we have to consider what that looks like when you go into Planned
Right.
Parenthood. Oh, you're thinking about adoption. Here's a pamphlet. Be on your way.
That's the adoption referral is
Yeah.
the pamphlet. Okay, cool.
That's the service that we're
Okay.
offering. Yeah.
Okay, this next part, which is definitely comical and disturbing. I think on some of these, you know how you read through, you don't know if you're sick or whatever, but if you Google anything, like your left pinky hurts, like you have cancer or you have a heart attack, like everything just boils down to those two things on the internet.
I had a stretch where I had excessive bruising regularly, and I got nervous. I was like, oh, this could be...
Oh, and you're a worrier. That had to be awesome.
I was gonna leukemia all the
Yeah,
way.
I'm dead.
Like, every sign that I had leukemia was there. And then one day I paid close attention, and when I would make my bed, I'd clip the footboard a little bit and just kept bumping my leg into the same spot on the footboard. It wasn't leukemia after all.
Thank God.
wasn't leukemia after all. So, but you know how they list stuff and you're like, I don't know. Maybe I need to get tested for that. I don't know. It's like the self-help guys. Do you find yourself having low energy? Are you tired? Do you wish you could get more sleep? Would you like to lose more weight? It's like these generic questions that everybody's like, yes, know this. And so, would you like to eat whatever you want and not have to be accountable for it? So this is like this, and I'm not going through some of these. Some of these are funny. Jock itch. Planned Parenthood treats you for jock itch? Give me a break. Okay, as we flip the page. We hope the listener. I'm not saying some of these. I don't know what some of this stuff is, but it just goes through stuff. They help you with this stuff. Painful sex.
Okay, so what I find interesting is, for example, endometriosis.
Okay.
The only treatment that any OBGYN or gynecologist will treat women with, if they're not pro-life and they don't subscribe to more natural homeopathic, trying to find what we can actually do for endometriosis, is birth control. So if a woman, and you cannot diagnose endometriosis, you can kind of suspect it based off of symptoms, but you have to go in surgically and with a laparoscope and look for it. And then once they're in there,
which they're
remove
not
it.
doing,
which they don't do.
Okay.
So that's what I find interesting is, they're on their website, they list all of these things.
No, it looks like a hospital.
But what does it mean?
Right. I don't know what some of this stuff is, nor am I going to repeat it on.
And it's the same thing like with PMS and PMDD, pain and stuff like that women go through. My physician, for example, has gone over these things with me, my primary care physician. And he's like, oh, we can do this. Like there's certain things that you can do, especially if women are struggling with severe PMS or PMDD. But Planned Parenthood, again, their solution is birth control. Everything, their answer to a lot of these issues, birth control, birth control, birth control. Now UTI, like a urinary tract infection, we did see and treat that.
You did. I was going to ask you about that specifically because that's common.
Because it's super easy. You just, you test the urine, dip it, and it shows up, and then you treat it with antibiotic. So it's just super easy to treat a UTI.
But some of this other stuff, I don't think people know what it is, or it's like on an OBGYN website, but they don't actually treat it. They're just listing it.
And so infertility support and referrals.
Yeah.
Like infertility support. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's infertility support.
And here's a referral, right? Like what are they going to do for infertility?
How do they treat painful sex? That's on the list.
I know. I don't know.
But they won't report like rape victims. That's one of the most sane things on here. Steve's dying to get into some of these.
It kind of reads like
desire problems. What in the world is that? Get a better looking boyfriend or girlfriend. I don't know. Isn't that like, I can't help you. How do they have that on there? Is this like some sophisticated medical? And it's not erectile dysfunction. That's listed also.
Yeah.
But then they have desire problems. So I would give $100 to have Steve call Planned Parenthood after we record this and be like, my name is Steve Garland. I need to come in for desire problems.
I saw on your website you can treat.
I just want to see how that conversation would go.
I wonder if they ask you if you have any of the other symptoms. Like, yeah, got that. Got that. Don't have that.
Do you have to say it with that voice?
I would love some of our leaders or volunteers to call and say, yeah, I have a libido problem. I want to know what you could do.
But this
could do to help me.
But this could get like legitimate people in. So breast problems, okay? But they don't do mammograms.
No.
But you would think that they do.
A lot of this is just not super scientific, just problems.
Oh,
right.
Desire problems?
I'm a knee problem doctor.
What is that?
But you notice they say chest/breast problems.
Oh,
we don't want to discriminate against the
trans thing.
Yeah.
I didn't even read that just because chest/breast problems. That's how it's listed. Because
that's how it's listed on their website.
Remember Office Space, where they're asking Tom Zimkowski or whatever, like what he does? He's like, well, I take the specs from the engineers to the customer. So like you actually take them? Well, no, I have my secretary do it. So what would you say you do here? It looks like him trying to justify his job right now.
Yeah.
I have
seriously.
people problems, darn it. What's the matter with you people?
Exactly.
Well, and another big one too that's very common that affects a lot of women is PCOS.
Yes.
So polycystic ovary syndrome, and I can tell you too from my experience there were women who came in and our nurse practitioner suspected they had PCOS, didn't treat it, didn't do anything about it.
but it's
birth control.
on the website.
That's a classic birth control
Yeah.
one, right? Like
Yep.
you can use the birth control to regularize your cycles, and if you want kids, then you get in vitro. It doesn't fix anything.
No, it's all Band-Aid, and it's always birth control. That's the solution, birth control.
Robitussin. Like Chris Rock. He said his dad's.
Or if you're Hispanic, Vicks.
Was it Vicks?
For us, Hispanics are
Hispanics
Vicks
are-
and some 7-Up.
I must be Hispanic because
Vicks Vaporub.
I got to get the 23andMe test now because that was my parents'
Yeah.
go-to, 7-Up and Vicks.
I've known you a long time. You're not Mexican. I can just declare that. You don't need to send your blood through the mail. You are like pale Wisconsin. Like you're not Mexican.
Okay.
You never
Eating
know, Steve.
and enjoying
I'm
Mexican
rooting for you.
food doesn't make you Mexican.
Well, you may be surprised.
Your name is Steven Gonzalez. What? Okay.
Well, this one's comical too. Sexual health concerns, unsure. That's how it reads on their website.
I know.
Sexual health concerns, unsure.
But to me, it's like you have to write the 25-page essay and you just start repeating yourself. They have erectile dysfunction. They have painful sex. They have sexual health concerns. To me, that would just, I guess, cover everything.
I'd like to know the distinction between desire/libido problems and then arousal problems. Wouldn't that be the same thing?
I think so, but I didn't want to use the word arousal on the podcast unless Steve was going to say it. But yeah, let's just read through those. Here we go.
Rip and rip it.
I'm not reading the top one.
Rip and rip it.
Desire problems, arousal problems, orgasm problems, painful sex. And then they go into like legitimate stuff, period problems. Then they have pelvic pain. But that's why I'm saying some of these are goofy and like, how do you help me with that? But some of these are legit normal checkups, obviously, particularly for women, UTI and all of that. And then they go in there and they don't get squat. I mean, really, all the goofy stuff is probably their creepy advice, but on the real medical stuff, they just don't do it.
Right.
This is the myth. But if you're at work and you're like, we need to defund Planned Parenthood, and your buddy is like, are you crazy? They do so much more than abortion, and they go to the website, your buddy will be justified.
Right.
You'll look like an idiot. And that's why we're doing this podcast, is because you'll be able to say, yeah, they don't do that.
So
Like
if their high school teacher said you need to write an essay to justify your government funding, $750 million a year, this is where they're like double space, 2.5 space, up the font a little bit, shrink the margin or increase the margins. That's what this is.
Yeah, and just, on this list alone, I can tell you of all of these, like how many are here? 1, 2, 3, 4, like almost 20, right? I can remember 3 that we actually treated in the 3 years working for Planned Parenthood, which was bacterial vaginosis, UTI, and yeast infection.
And that's basically like, at least for the first 2, is like penicillin, right? Which I don't think we're going to have suddenly, without Planned Parenthood, there's a national amoxicillin and penicillin shortage. where you
Well,
can't
and
just
even
go
with a
any-
yeast infection, you can go and buy that treatment over the counter.
Okay. So there's just no there with regard to like the national health crisis if Planned Parenthood is defunding.
Right.
Go to your corner pharmacy or go to your primary care or community health clinic and get your $4 at Walmart antibiotic.
They don't do any of the legitimate medical stuff. This is your point about the double space with the essay, which is a great analogy. They're just listing all of this stuff. It's just window dressing. Okay, the next topic, the next thing they have on their website, so they have STD testing, they list all that. They have pregnancy testing, they list all that. They have sexual and reproductive concerns, and then that's all the creepy stuff mixed in with a few medical things. Then they have number 4, prenatal and postpartum services. This is super deceitful because you're like, well, they're helping the women who just gave birth. Are they?
No.
Okay.
No.
Are they just giving them birth control so it doesn't happen again?
Exactly.
Like, what is that? Okay.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Miscarriage care and support. I'm actually surprised they have that on there.
Mm-hmm.
Why would they do that? Is this all just to get women in and get them on birth control? It sounds like what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
The whole thing is get on birth control. You trust us. Then if you get pregnant, we'll do your abortion.
Right. And one of the things that I was really sadly really good at was reaching out to local OBGYNs and letting them know that we offered IUDs for Medicaid patients. And so what they would do is they would send them all to us because they didn't have the time on their schedule to bring those girls back into their private practice to insert.
Okay.
And so they were like, you can go to Planned Parenthood. And so we were, I mean, that's one of the biggest, when I figured that out, that was one of the best ways that we were meeting our quotas, is all of the girls that were on Medicaid were coming to us for their IUDs.
Wow.
Postpartum. So they had just had their babies, and they were being
Getting
sent
the
to us for
IUD.
the IUD. Yep.
That's so depressing.
I mean, I'm not proud of it, right?
No,
obviously,
no,
right?
no, I
But
know what you're saying.
it's that's how we brought.
That's
them
how
in.
you met
Yep.
your quota.
Yep.
But on the website, if you go prenatal and postpartum care services, pregnancy testing, which they just list again, prenatal services and referrals. So that's just BS.
BS. Yeah. So if she's pregnant, she wants to keep her baby. Okay, here's a little paper with some different, services.
Because this got us in with the line that you will not see a doctor at Planned Parenthood unless you're having an abortion, and they hated that. And then we had the no doctor here sign on days that they aren't doing abortions, and they hated that sign because it's just kind of
Well, they didn't even see the nurse practitioner if that was the case, because
Wow.
there was no need. The medical assistant, ran the pregnancy test, went
You're
in the room with
pregnant,
her.
you
You're
want the
pregnant.
baby,
You want the baby.
here's your pamphlet.
Yep. Here's your info. Bye.
But I mean, on here, it looks like they got doctors running around and they're taking women through all
Right.
9 months, which I guess is how you secure $750 million of tax funding that you can't get Republicans to take away. But we need to do it this go around, which we've harped on.
What is the actual miscarriage care and support?
I never saw it.
They don't do DNCs on that, do they?
I don't know
That you know of?
that I know of. No,
I've never heard of that.
I've never heard of it.
Have you ever heard of that? That Planned Parenthood will do a DNC for your miscarriage?
I've heard it alleged. I don't know that I've encountered someone on the sidewalk or talked to any leaders where it's actually the case.
Well, now they're just saying that that's the same as an abortion. If you miscarry,
Yeah.
you have an abortion.
Of all the young women who came to us who chose life, I never heard back from any of them that maybe had a miscarriage and then came back to us for care. So
Okay.
if it was happening, I wasn't a witness to it.
Okay. Now, here's why reason number 10,872, Planned Parenthood is not legitimate health care. Every legitimate healthcare clinic would have a woman who came in and said, I think I'm miscarrying. That would just be common. And technically with Planned Parenthood, if they were doing all this stuff, that would actually be pretty common. If you're dealing with people who could be pregnant or people who are pregnant, you're going to encounter miscarriages a lot and you're going to help them. You're saying it never happened.
Not on my watch, no.
Some of these things look like the Costco hot dogs. They get you in the door, and then you buy your big screen TV and your box of 120 hot dogs. I just got a Costco subscription.
You did?
Let's call it my pizza subscription. $10 for that pizza. It's huge.
It's amazing. Costco is amazing.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's actually producer John, who's filming right now, he's always interested in filming my house, like making all the kids breakfast and all that. And what would actually be fun is a Costco trip. Because Mary Lisa often goes alone, but if she needs me to go, like on a Saturday morning, that's just like war because it means she needs 2 buggies. So we're like going through, and it's funny because I can cite things like peanut butter that is like, oh my gosh, it's like the end of the world. I'm like, that'll probably last a week. It's just like you buy all this stuff and then it's just gone.
I think you can go to grad school at Costco now. They've got it all.
They're amazing.
I had a subscription once, not to be off topic here, but I didn't use it very often. I liked it, but I didn't use it very often. I think it was just location for me.
We'll hit that
eventually,
but we're a long ways from that because it's just amazing because you can go in there and get some of the stuff and not have to worry about it like for a week or two.
I'd give them.
Do they have a scan and go? Because that's, this is kind of like Planned Parenthood. Just scan and go what your issue is and get in and out the door.
And I don't like the Costco analogy, actually, because it is like the hot dogs or the ice at Buc-ee's. Buc-ee's is
that's a good
69 cents for like 20 pounds of ice, but then you go in there and you're like, I just bought a $10,000 grill. So that's how they get you in it. What is there?
That's how they get you.
They're like, all the Cokes are like $1.20 for like the 44 ounce at Buc-ee's, right? It's awesome. And then you go in, you're like, I just paid $9 for peach salsa, right?
How am I going to get this lawnmower home?
How am I getting this lawnmower? I needed a fire pit.
You stopped to use the restroom and you've walked out with $60 worth of stuff.
$32 or something gone, and you're like, just wanted a Coke. Their barbecue sandwiches are worth it. And all that stuff is it's not too bad. But the thing is, if you go into Buc-ee's, they actually have a lot of stuff and services. And if you go into Costco, they have a lot of stuff and services. Planned Parenthood doesn't do squat except for abortions.
I think
and birth control.
That maybe Buc-ee's and Costco can split the $750 million after we take it away from Planned Parenthood.
We should take it. There is, and we've done some of these talking points. I mean, you could just take their $750 million and give it to rape victims. You could give it to the anti-sex traffickers. You could give it to Homeland Security. You could give it to the Secret Service. You could give it to so many other, worthy things.
Or just pregnant moms that
or just
need
pregnant
help.
moms.
Yeah.
But see, then they say you're coming in with an agenda. But if we say, I want to take the I've done this before, and the guy got really pissed off. I said, I want to take the $750 million and clean up the oceans from all the pollution. And I don't know anything. I think climate change is a joke, and I don't believe in pollution. And why can't we pollute the earth? Like we're like above that. Like we live here, okay? Yeah, the barbecue girl smokes. Okay, yeah, I lived here and I contributed to the pollution. That's just part of being, But if you just say you want to do the environmental thing, like I'd rather waste money on that than waste money on giving it to somebody who's only killing children.
This is the big defunding Planned Parenthood myth. Is like, they're going to take away the money. No, we're going to reallocate it. We're going to put it somewhere else where they're going to do a good job with it and not double space their essay on why they deserve the government money.
Give it to the ACLU. What would they say? Steve can't manage to say that. The Clean Up the Oceans was pushing the envelope. The thing is, and this is actually the risk of them not getting defunded by weak Republicans and certainly Democrats, is that it is actually such a small amount of money. So the whole I don't want to deal with it, which is what happened in 2017. I don't want to deal with it. It's not a lot of money. Like if Elon's going to go cut the Department of Justice or the Department of Education, that's like real money. But $750 million, sadly, is not a lot of money to most politicians. And so they're just like, we'll keep getting them funded, and maybe the pro-lifers won't hold us accountable for not defunding them. That's why we have to be so militant about this, is because they have to feel the pain if they don't do it. But if they say, it's 2 years till I got to run for re-election, $750 million is not a lot of money.
It's a good time to do it then, because we're brand new into the new administration. We're brand new into these terms, and everybody has the attention span of like an ant. And so by the time you get to the next election, by the time it's 2026, by that point we'll have clear evidence that the world has not ended, just as it didn't end after Roe was overturned. We don't have women dying of desire problems in the streets, and Whoopi Goldberg has to step over their bodies. Like, there will be no problems because they're going to reallocate it. I think it should be easier than they think it's going to be, because people are going to forget, and they're going to realize that they're going to forget for the best possible reason that there was no problem imposed upon America by getting rid of Planned Parenthood.
It should be. It's similar. We keep going to the environment stuff, but remember it was global warming. And then we realized we're actually cooling down. Okay, Earth is cooling down. So they don't say global warming anymore. They say climate change. And of course, everybody has the same phrase where they live. You don't like the weather in Texas. You don't like the weather in Green Bay. You don't like the weather in Florida. Wait 5 minutes. We all have that similar, like we think our weather's unique, but it's very true. The climate changes every single day. It's just this like generic phrase that sounds bad. And the defunding Planned Parenthood sounds so awful because of this list of stuff that we've gone over. I mean, women are going to be dying in the streets because they're all going to have breast cancer because we defunded Planned Parenthood. And it's not a lot of money to the government. It's everything to them. It's a third of their income. They cannot survive. We will see multiple Planned Parenthood locations go up for sale.
Yeah.
They simply don't have the cash flow to keep all these places open, especially in these abortion-free states where they or have bans or can only do abortions up to a certain point. They're just going to close. And you have to fund yourself. Like every business, every other legitimate nonprofit has to go out and say, we do this. If you believe in it, also support us, give us money. And that's like how nonprofits work. Planned Parenthood somehow doesn't have to do that. They do. It's a third of their income or donations, but then the other third is abortions, and the other third is just a government handout. It just makes absolutely zero sense. And so if they close, I don't understand the pity party that we're supposed to have.
And if they're defunded, I don't understand why they outcry either. Like, what's the big deal? They, like you said, they can fund themselves.
Right.
Which is why I believe they definitely got into all the gender affirming care stuff. They need the money. They're desperate for the money.
Yes. So before we get into that, one other point that you said that let's say, like, what's the best argument we pro-lifers could have? Because we would say, give it to the moms who choose life. And that sounds great, but they'll accuse us of having an agenda.
Of course.
With that said, that worked in Texas.
It did.
We allocated money, and Democrats were totally on board with it for women who – you're just not going to find a liberal that says, I'm not giving a single mother tax dollars. That's not going to happen. North Carolina has it. I think they have like $80 million, $90 million allocated, for women who choose life. If all these companies can pay for women to travel to get abortions, why can't we pay for them to, help them get started?
It'd be one thing, too, if they were giving this stuff away for free, and I guess some of it's for free, but when you're talking about $25 for a pregnancy test, when you can get it for $1.25 at the Dollar Tree down the street or whatever, that's triple dipping. They're even if you don't go to the Dollar Tree, you can get a pregnancy test. I mean, our families have probably kept the pregnancy test industry in business for years.
Yeah.
You can get them for cheaper than that. So why are they getting a government subsidy and donations to then go and charge a higher price than you would get at the grocery store or the Dollar Tree?
Yeah. It's a good point. The stuff actually isn't. They're not offering it for free. Okay. So the gender affirming care, I think that this is kind of a myth. I don't think that because a lot of pro-lifers are freaked out about it. Like they're making so much money on the gender affirming care. And I know it's like, an average of $70,000 if you want to go from Tina to Tommy. So there's just not, they made so much money off of abortion. So if you take Texas, okay, so they're not doing abortions, okay? And in a place like this, they were doing 30 to 40 abortions per week, okay? And then they went to every other week. They were doing about 80 abortions a month, And that to keep an abortion clinic open, you don't have to do abortions. You got to do a lot of abortions. And they were making a fortune. I mean, Houston was doing 40 or 50 a day, 6 days a week. That's a lot of abortions. Yeah. And then now they're just dependent on people actually
everything else
wanting to do the full meal deal, not just like dress up and be a girl or a guy, but get the chop.
No.
I got to speak languages Steve understands.
Is that one of the things here? You've got the fibroids, pelvic pain, and the chop.
Well, the Bill Maher passed me the saw. But there's just not, I know everybody's like, oh man, everybody's trans these days. Well, are they? I mean, how many? It's a small percentage of people that get the chop.
I think one thing that helps them, though, I agree with you in general, but I also think that the people who get the chop they're setting themselves up for a lifetime need of mental, physical, social. Like, you don't just get the chop and then you're fine. There's like...
What about medicine, too? Don't they have to keep taking certain
The hormones,
medicines?
yeah.
The hormones?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the subscription model, right? Like, we used to get to go buy Microsoft Office and then we had it. Now they're trying to make us pay like $19.99 a month for it or whatever it costs. I think this is sort of like, hey, now we've got the subscription model. You get the chop and you are going to be medically dependent for the rest of your life.
Right.
Yeah. So my point on this is that that's not making up for the abortion money. There's not as much money in that for them as there is for abortion.
Right.
I also think they have a branding problem, actually, because it's Planned Parenthood. And you're like, I'm trying to transition. Like, it's not an instant connection. For certain people in certain circles, they know that anything regarding sexual issues or problems or deviance is Planned Parenthood related.
Your one-stop chop shop for sexual deviance.
That's their T-shirt. It's like the end of the commercial. The phrase that they have to say. We have to laugh about this. I'm sorry, but it's not instant. I mean, Planned Parenthood, and that's why it raised eyebrows. Like, they're getting into the gender transition stuff. They're Planned Parenthood. Don't they do abortions? But I want to calm people's nerves and say, if they get defunded, there's just not enough dudes running around that want to be girls to keep them in business for some of these places. Mm-hmm. And I have another theory that I would like you to refute or agree with, and that is one of the reasons we haven't seen this mass exodus of closures in these sort of red semi or fully abortion-free states is that Planned Parenthood is very competitive, and they're not really national. They're what's it called?
Like affiliate?
Affiliates, sorry. Mm-hmm. So you have the CEO of Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast, and they compete with Planned Parenthood of North Texas, which was yours. And then so they all want to keep their empire. Mm-hmm. But eventually, what does that look like? Is that like they sell the Houston Planned Parenthood? It's the largest in the world. It has to be worth, they bought it for $17 million. It's got to be worth at least 30 or 40 now. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was back in 2006. So they sell that. What do they do with that money? Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast, do they merge with Denver? Is that what's going to happen?
I mean, we've seen it happen. What was it that we learned recently? Something odd with like...
There's a Planned Parenthood affiliate where Planned Parenthood was doing so poorly in Kentucky and Indiana that they are now part of the Northwest. So like the headquarters for Kentucky, Indiana Planned Parenthood is in like Seattle or Portland or somewhere out there.
See, that's what I think that will happen, is that you'll have, obviously, New York and New Jersey and Chicago, Seattle, San Diego, San Francisco. You'll have these big, Planned Parenthood affiliates that can just say, hey, you can be part of us. We'll give you a job. We're booming. And we'll take your $80 million that you got from your real estate.
And there's a real impact from that, because sometimes you get like the negative pro-lifers, the pessimists who are like, oh, well, they're just going to do the gender affirming stuff. The other line is, we've gotten some emails like, what does it matter if they close? They're going to send out the pills anyway. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, every time you close, they're going to throw overboard, I think, the high overhead locations like Houston is what I would expect. And they're also going to throw overboard the little small town, federally subsidized, like we're open Tuesday and Thursday from 8 to 12. What difference does that make? That means you don't have the people who work at those little small town Planned Parenthoods showing up in your schools, teaching sex ed to your kids, all of those sorts of things. There's a much bigger ripple impact than I think many realize.
I think one of the reasons, too, they're not closing is because they're still able to fundraise, and they want to be like, we're in redneck Oklahoma standing up for women's rights against evil Trump supporters, and send money now. Eventually, that's not going to keep them afloat. But I also think there's a way you could close, I'm not going to reveal it, but you could close all those locations and raise a ton of money for at the national level for Planned Parenthood. So I would just think that if Alexis McGill Johnson was smart, which she's not, she would actually encourage some of these places to close like a strategic loss that you could then raise money off of and then be like, but here's how we're coming back, because right now they're saving face, and people think, well, they don't even do abortions in Texas, yet they're still open. They must offer a lot of these great services.
I always found it interesting too when we my former affiliate was Planned Parenthood North Texas, and I think they did end up having to merge with the Gulf Coast ultimately. But I always found it interesting in the 3 years that I worked there that the majority of those facilities were working in the red. So no one was making money except for the 2 abortion facilities. And yet for those
That makes sense.
for all those years, one of the things that I wondered was, how are we still open? If all of these locations are all working in the red, they keep telling us, "Oh, we can't give raises. You guys are not, we're not meeting our quotas and whatnot." How are we still open? How are you not closing these centers,
But wasn't
right?
it because you were referring them to the abortion centers and they were getting abortions from you? So on your books,
yeah, exactly.
it's not showing up on your books.
Exactly.
Because they did the abortion at that location, which is also deceitful because they should have been like, yeah, but Ramona referred us 20% of our abortions. We should give her a bonus or whatever. But they're just saying, hey, this is your little clinic's numbers and you're in the red.
Yeah. And so, mine was in the black. So we were in the black. Mine and maybe 2 others were in the black. Everybody else was in the red. And so I was, pushing myself to ensure that we, saw more people, brought in more, made more money, whatever I had to do to get us to make more money and, see more patients. And everybody else was in the red, and we continued that way. And because I could see the numbers from the other facilities. I didn't see the abortion facilities numbers, though.
Really?
And so I just knew we were all in the red except for mine. And so I just thought, gosh, how is it that they maintain themselves? How do we still stay open? So it wasn't until my facility closed, which was shocking to our nurse practitioner, why they closed us down when I left. Because we were one of the most lucrative of the non-abortion facilities.
They had to replace you. I think that's
They
the
would
problem.
have, well, and I think they were afraid. Because they probably thought, gosh, we've already been infiltrated now by this crazy woman. Do we want to risk replacing her and the possibility of other people also who worked with Ramona? Do we want to keep them on? We don't know how far this has gone, right?
Well, I've
Reputation.
Exactly.
But I've always put your conversion in the list of you that closed the clinic, that closed
Absolutely.
the location.
Absolutely.
And that's rare. That's rare. Well, first off, it's rare that directors or managers actually leave. There's not that many of y'all. But that wasn't the case with Sue. They replaced her, and then she led the campaign outside, and then they closed. That's like crazy.
Yeah.
When they had like a 10-year lease that they just signed, I think recently
Right.
before that.
And Abby left, and they just started, I think, bringing the lady up from Houston or whatever. But they continued, until
2013.
4 more years, since she left.
But I also just attribute it to, obviously, yes, I probably had an impact, but I definitely truly believe in the prayer because in the
Right.
grace, because after I left, then the folks decided, okay, we've seen this happen here. Now we're going to move on up, down the road 20 miles, and we're going to go to the other one. And then 5 years later, that one shut down too. So 40 Days for Life, showed up out of there in McKinney. So I don't know. And of course, Planned Parenthood's response was, oh, it's because of Texas defunding.
It's Texas defunding, yeah. But, yeah.
I don't believe that.
And of course, well, if that were true, they would have.
Then they would have all closed
of them
down.
now.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, just on the gender thing, to close this out, because some people are like, oh, no, they're doing all this, and it's so expensive, and that they're going to survive. They're really not even doing the gender-affirming care. It's like all this other garbage they have listed on their website. Okay, so estrogen and what is that?
Androgen, that's the male hormones.
Oh, of which I have those. I have the estrogen. They do that, the therapy. Testosterone hormone therapy. Puberty blockers. Surgery referrals. There we go. Transition support. And in parentheses, next to transition support, they have social legal.
So they like help you change your driver's license to say you're a man now?
I guess they do that. They also, I don't know, will help sue your employer if they're like, hey, you used to be Bob, now you're Kelly. It's freaking out everybody.
But it's support. So that
Support,
just means referral.
Which is always go for it. Not
make
like you may be a guy and you need to stay that way.
They make a plan with your kids' teachers to hide the transition from the parents?
Yeah. So they're basically doing all the crazy stuff. They're not doing the actual surgery. Puberty blockers. Do you think they're just writing the prescription?
They're either writing the prescription or they're actually coming in for their puberty blocker.
Yeah, they're doing that, and they really inflate this because we had a case during the previous campaign in Thousand Oaks, California, where a woman came into Planned Parenthood. She was menopausal. She needed hormone replacement therapy, legitimate, and they wrote it up as they wrote it up as gender affirming therapy, gender affirming care, and she stormed up. She's like, "I'm not trying to become a man."
But whatever it takes, right, to inflate those numbers to make it look like they're offering those cares, that type of care.
It's sort of like it's the same thing that they do when they try to say that a DNC for a miscarriage is the same as a DNC abortion.
Right.
Like, hey, it's the same thing. Same thing here. We're just affirming your gender. You know you're a woman. You know you're a woman. You may be opposite sexes, but we're just affirming you whatever it is that you are. We're going to affirm you. Same thing.
Yeah.
All right, so then they continue to list stuff that's just totally generic just to justify their existence. Mental health, HIV services, wellness, and preventative care. That's all just contraception. Ramona's answered everything's contraception.
Is that right?
Yeah, wellness and preventative care.
Or, you need to take some vitamins or
something.
Get
some vitamin C. Now we need $750 million to tell somebody to do that. Okay, the following services we don't endorse. Okay, they do birth control. They do birth control implant, birth control patch, birth control pill, birth control shot, birth control vaginal ring, cervical cap, diaphragm, condoms.
Because you can't just go to the Circle K.
The Circle K. They don't do the chop at Buc-ee's. They don't want any part of the chop. The only chop they have is the brisket. Okay. That's what you're doing. You're turning yourself into brisket. It's disgusting. Okay. IUD. I'm not saying that. Sterilization. Okay. Let's just move on. Emergency contraception. Plan B and Ella. What's Ella?
That is a pill it's sort of like a morning after pill, but it's designed to work a little bit later and prevent implantation, whereas the morning after pill primarily tries to delay ovulation, though it perhaps can be abortifacient. The Ella pill, so baby's conceived, we'll just make sure the baby is not implanted. We've got this is a great plug for the ILJ, and we'll put a link on the show page here. They put together a couple of really good documents kind of explaining a lot of these distinctions. Why are we at pharmacies? What's the difference between birth control, the morning after pill, Ella, and the abortion pill? So check that out if you're interested.
All right. And then obviously to close this out, this is the easy, fun part, but there are just so many alternatives to Planned Parenthood. Obviously, the pregnancy resource centers outnumber them 5 to 1 throughout the country. It's 7 or 8 to 1 in some places. But let's say you think pregnancy centers are crazy and you don't want anything. It's pro-life propaganda. Just the community health clinics alone that do all the birth control, do all this stuff, they're already supported by the government. There's just absolutely no need for Planned Parenthood, unless you want an abortion. And the idea that we have to fund that, does like Whole Women's Health or some of these other abortion providers, like if I was a doctor and I did abortions in San Francisco, I'd be so mad that Planned Parenthood got tax funding. Is there that inner turmoil?
That's a good question. We referred to some of the later term abortion facilities, so I'm assuming they must have had a good working relationship.
I think they're like the Sunnis and the Shiite extremists in the Middle East, where when they're not fighting us, they're fighting each other.
Yeah, I can see that because the doctors, they're not dumb. They know that you go through this website and you're like, they don't do any of that crap. I do it at my office. I don't get $750 million, and I do abortions, So I will say, because somebody could say, y'all are idiots. Well, if they get defunded and Planned Parenthood goes away, then there's going to be all these abortion doctors that come forward and do abortions. I beg to differ because Planned Parenthood does a great job at basically being the front person for the abortion industry, and you don't really know who the doctors are. They fly around, they're circuit riders, they go do this, they go do that, they do abortions. It's not their name on the door with abortion under it. They're just going to Planned Parenthood. So, and they like it that way. They don't want to be known for that, right? And so that on top of if Planned Parenthood goes away, well, the doctors are just going to start doing abortions. That's just not true. There's a shortage of abortion doctors. You can easily look at the stats and see that younger doctors are far less willing to do an abortion, even if they support it, which like anything else, you're like, yeah, that's really great. Women need it. I'm not doing it. I'm not killing a baby. So defunding Planned Parenthood will save lives because they're not going to be able to survive without it, and abortions are going to go down. That's one of my predictions because they're just not going to be available. This is the brilliant thing. You can have all of the legislation and support in the world in California or New York, but if they don't have abortion facilities, there won't be any abortion. It's just market driven, which has obviously been the focus of 40 Days for Life by peacefully praying, giving loving alternatives, and getting people away, and then the clinic closes. So anything else y'all want to add as we wrap up?
Well, I was going to say, not to mention, too, apart from we want to defund Planned Parenthood and see them go away, but also it's just an injustice to the American taxpayer, too. We it's just not right, know. And the thing is that Planned Parenthood has always done a good job of saying, your tax dollars don't go to support abortion. But yeah, it does. It does go. And not to mention not only abortion, but all these other immoral and unethical things that happen within these non-abortion facilities. So on one side, the American taxpayer can say, well, I feel this way about abortion. But also then I would come in and say, well, how do you feel about statutory rape? How do you feel about, sex trafficking? How do you feel about young girls 14 and 15 years old going and getting birth control who are promiscuous and in statutory rape situations? They walk out the door with birth control. How do you feel about that? Because, we can make the argument for abortion, but let's make the argument about the non-abortion part of the business that receives all of this funding, right?
Yeah.
That's what needs to go.
There's on that point, I've made the point about the wussy Republicans and all that. There's also a positive side, which I don't really like, but it's the reality, which is there's a segment of conservatives, Republicans, that are actually more wound up that Planned Parenthood gets government funding than they are about abortion itself. Because we could sit here and be like, who cares who pays for it? They're killing a baby. It's awful. But they're more wound up about and they do it with government funding, which is awful. But it's it's not the worst part, right? But there are people that think that is the worst part. And that can help defund Planned Parenthood and just the whole government wasteful spending. And that's kind of a popular thing now that we're going to cut it. If they don't do it now, it will never get done. We've said that before. It'll be extremely disappointing. I would personally criticize every congressman or woman who doesn't do this. But this is a good podcast to share because we lay out basically what happens. Nothing happens. We lose nothing. If you close all the locations of other things, Costco, Chick-fil-A, people are going to feel it. They're going to be like, oh, that affects me. This was not going to affect anybody. It's really not.
And I worked for a county health department before I worked for Planned Parenthood. And so the majority of all of these things that Planned Parenthood offers, we offered, with the exception, of course, abortion. And the thing is at the county health department, if there was a young girl who came in, and was in a statutory rape situation, you can guarantee that she wasn't going to walk out the door with birth control, and there was going to be a report made, and there was going to be an investigation. That doesn't happen at Planned Parenthood.
There we go. Well, be sure to rate, review, and share this podcast. Also, with this topic, go back, if you haven't already, and watch the Defund Planned Parenthood webcast. It's a video webcast. Go to defundplannedparenthood.com. Sign the petition, and you can also, in that webcast, learn the 5 things you can do to defund Planned Parenthood. And so please check that out. Thank you for bearing with us during this podcast. We will not say chop ever again for a very, very long time. So please rate, review, share it, and we will see you next time. God bless you.